Of course, some reject the voice of the prophets immediately, but others prayerfully ponder their honest questions, questions that will be settled with patience and an eye of faith. If the proclamation had been revealed in a different century, there would still have been questions, just different questions than those of today. One purpose of prophets is to help us in resolving sincere questions.
We declare the means by which mortal life is created to be divinely appointed. We affirm the sanctity of life and of its importance in God's eternal plan.
The proclamation is direct. We declare the means by which mortal life is created to be divinely appointed. We affirm the sanctity of life and of its importance in God's eternal plan. Our Father's plan encourages a husband and a wife to bring children into the world and obligates us to speak in defense of the unborn.
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has consistently opposed the practice of abortion. 100 years ago, the First Presidency wrote, "And we again take this opportunity of warning the Latter-day Saints against those practices of feticide and infanticide."
Over 30 years ago, as a young law professor, I published one of the earliest articles on the legal consequences of abortion. Since that time, I have been a knowledgeable observer of the national debate and the unfortunate Supreme Court decisions on the so-called right to abortion. I've been fascinated with how cleverly those who sought and now defend legalized abortion on demand have moved the issue away from a debate on the moral, ethical, and medical pros and cons of legal restrictions on abortion, and have focused the debate on the slogan or issue of choice. My young brothers and sisters, in today's world, we are not true to our teachings if we are merely pro-choice. We must stand up for the right choice. Those who persist in refusing to think beyond slogans and sound bites like pro-choice wander from the goals they pretend to espouse and wind up giving their support to results they might not support if those results were presented without disguise.
I apologize for the use of words repugnant to me and ill-suited to this hallowed pulpit. I do so only for clarity of communication regarding reverence for human life. It is a war on the defenseless, on the voiceless. It is a war on the unborn. This war, labeled abortion, is of epidemic proportion and is waged globally.
It is believed that over 1 million Jewish children were killed during the Holocaust. As I experienced the museum, I was overcome with emotion and completely devastated. Standing outside to regain my composure, I reflected on the horror of the experience and suddenly realized that in the United States alone, there are as many abortions every 2 years as the number of Jewish children killed in the Holocaust during the Second World War. But the intensity of my feeling was about the loss of children. Bringing children into the world is a sacred part of our Father in Heaven's plan of happiness. We are so numbed and intimidated by the immensity of the practice of abortion that many of us have pushed it to the back of our minds and try to keep it out of our consciousness. Clearly, the adversary is attacking the value of children on many levels.
Abortion, which has increased enormously, causes one to ask, have we strayed so far from God's second great commandment, love thy neighbor, that a baby in a womb no longer qualifies to be loved, at least as the mother's neighbor?
The woman's choice for her own body does not validate choice for the body of another. The expression, terminate the pregnancy, applies literally only to the woman. The consequence of terminating the fetus therein involves the body and very life of another. These two individuals have separate brains, separate hearts, separate circulatory systems. To pretend that there is no child and no life there is to deny reality.
Choice can even become a slogan to justify one particular choice. For example, in the 1990s, one who says, "I am pro-choice," is clearly understood as opposing any legal restrictions upon a woman's choice to abort a fetus at any point in her pregnancy. On this subject, our prophetic guidance is clear. The Lord commanded, "Thou shalt not kill, nor do anything like unto it." The church opposes elective abortion for personal or social convenience. Our members are taught that, subject only to some very rare exceptions, they must not submit to, perform, encourage, pay for, or arrange for an abortion.
Much is being said in the press and in the pulpit concerning abortion. This Church of Jesus Christ opposes abortion and counsels all members not to submit to nor to participate in any abortion in any way for convenience or to hide sins. Abortion must be considered one of the most revolting and sinful practices in this day, when we are witnessing a frightening evidence of permissiveness leading to sexual immorality.
When one knows the gospel of Jesus Christ, there is cause to rejoice. The words joy and rejoice appear through the scriptures repetitively. Latter-day Saints are happy people. When one knows the doctrine, parenthood becomes a sacred obligation, the begetting of life a sacred privilege. Abortion would be unthinkable.
We declare the means by which mortal life is created to be divinely appointed. We affirm the sanctity of life and of its importance in God's eternal plan.
Our Father's plan encourages a husband and a wife to bring children into the world and obligates us to speak in defense of the unborn. If we pick and choose what we accept in the proclamation, we cloud our eternal view, putting too much importance on our experience here and now. By prayerfully pondering the proclamation through the eye of faith, we better understand how the principles are beautifully connected, supporting one another, revealing our Father's plan for His children.
A society, for example, in which individual consent is the only constraint on sexual activity is a society in decay. Adultery, promiscuity, elective abortion, and out-of-wedlock births are but some of the bitter fruits that grow out of the immorality sanctioned by the sexual revolution.
If we say we are anti-abortion in our personal life but pro-choice in public policy, we are saying that we will not use our influence to establish public policies that encourage righteous choices on matters God's servants have defined as serious sins. Some Latter-day Saints say they deplore abortion, but they give these exceptional circumstances as a basis for their pro-choice position, that the law should allow abortion on demand in all circumstances. Such persons should face the reality that the circumstances described in these three exceptions are extremely rare. For example, conception by incest or rape, the circumstance most commonly cited by those who use exceptions to argue for abortion on demand, are involved in only a tiny minority of abortions. Over 95% of the millions of abortions performed each year extinguish the life of a fetus conceived by consensual relations. Thus, the effect in over 95% of abortions is not to vindicate choice, but to avoid its consequences. Using arguments of choice to try to justify altering the consequences of choice is a classic case of omitting what the Savior called the weightier matters of the law.
Of course, some reject the voice of the prophets immediately, but others prayerfully ponder their honest questions, questions that will be settled with patience and an eye of faith. If the proclamation had been revealed in a different century, there would still have been questions, just different questions than those of today.